Good evening, everybody. Hi, it's Dr. Bob here at the Vitality Project. I appreciate you joining me tonight. I'm here solo again tonight, and then next week we'll be back into our regular schedule with our regular guests, Doug Prater and Michael Morar, who've been joining us alternating on Wednesday nights. Just want to give you a little heads up tonight. I'll be brief tonight, but I wanted to give you a heads up if you haven't been following it in our most recent post series. We've been looking at relationships in our lives and how our having tools to manage the ups and downs of relationships, how critical that is to our sustaining successful recovery. And so we're looking at the relational dimension of our lives and trying to suggest some practical tools and exercises to help us to build up some new skills. One of the things that we're looking at, in fact, it's the title of tonight's brief overview, we're looking at how it impacts our relationships. When we place requirements on those that we love, we tend to reserve these requirements for people that are closest to us, and those requirements tend to take on the most absolute kind of quality. You've got to do it this way or else. And we're looking at how those affect not only our feelings in relationships and our behaviors, but how it affects the relationship overall. And so I gave an example in today's post looking at if I have an expectation that my partner must respect my work and express a lot of interest in my work, and if he or she doesn't, and that requirement is not satisfied, then it's possible that I will move into resentment. It's possible that I'll move into the example I gave today was withdrawal behavior. For some people, it's where they become more hostile and aggressive. And the upshot of it is that the relationship suffers. And so what we're doing is we're trying to dig a little bit beneath the surface. It's really what we're trying to do most all the time here at your Vitality Project is we're taking addiction as kind of the metaphor for any form of enslavement. For some of us, we are enslaved or have been enslaved to substances like alcohol and other drugs. Excuse me. For others of us, the enslavement comes more in the form of behaviors. It could be that we eat poorly, we eat too much, eat too little. It could be in the form of taking risks that we ought not to take. It could be in the form of sexuality or gambling or other compulsive behaviors. We can just go on and on with the list, but all of these, whether it be addiction to substance or addiction to behaviors, end up serving various functions such as self-medication, numbing out feelings, sometimes increasing feelings when we feel kind of flat and depressed. And other times it's just a way for us to connect to other people, but it's in a dysfunctional way. It's dysfunctional because the short-term solution to our problems, whether it's having too little feeling or too much feeling, or just feeling disconnected, the long-term consequences are deleterious by definition with addictive behaviors. That's how you define an addictive behavior, in fact. Something that I cannot stop doing that ends up harming me in the long run. So we're looking at relationships and what we can do to free ourselves up in relationships. And one of the things we're looking at are addictions to attitudes. And those attitudes sometimes can come out in the form of an absolute requirement of our partner that they must be something or else they don't love us or else we're miserable. And therein lies the rub, because being in relationship to somebody, let's say as a partner or one's parent or one's child, is to be in relationship to a human being, and thoughts and feelings ebb and flow, and each person is autonomous. The root of the term autonomous comes from two Greek words, autos, which means self, and nomos, which means law. And so each person operates in some ways with their own independence or their own self-law or autonomy. And we have to respect that. And when we place a requirement on somebody, it can get things pretty tight to where that person can't breathe. And it's likely to affect the relationship negatively. So I want to put it to you all these next few days is to examine. We provide exercises every morning, and you can try out these exercises yourself. Exercises that help encourage you to examine what you do, what kinds of expectations you bring. By the way, expectations might be another word for requirements. What kinds of expectations we bring to our relationships, what we might do to soften the edge of those expectations, or at least communicate them with more compassion and kindness, with more respect for our significant other's autonomy. And I'm hoping that you'll find encouragement in this series as we unpack alternatives to imposing ourselves on relationships. I think we're going to leave it at that tonight. I want to encourage you to examine relationships in your life. You know what? I'll add one postscript. I've shared this here before, but I'll share it again. When I ask in groups that I lead in local treatment centers or online in groups that I lead, when I ask people to share what it is that they find most stressful in their lives, and this is in the context of our talking about stress and distress being the number one triggers for addictive behavior, including relapse to addictive behavior in the lives of people that have been sober. The number one trigger, stress/distress. Distress is just basically negative stress, because there is actually something such as positive stress. So we'll call it distress for right now. When I ask individuals to prioritize what they think provides the greatest stress or distress in their lives, virtually always the majority of people will raise their hands and talk about relationships. And you might think, well, I'll just avoid that, because if relationships are the number one stressor, who wants that? The fact of the matter is that we're wired for relationships. And in fact, it's only because we care so much about relationships that when they go sideways, we're so affected so powerfully. And so it's a good news, bad news situation. The bad news is that sometimes relationships can just stress the heck out of us. The good news is if we can find ways to get underneath that distress and to promote healing, that they can provide the greatest resources imaginable in our lives. I pause for a second because I'm thinking of my wife, Colleen, who works nearly exclusively with couples and families as a therapist. And she cited research to me that I followed up on and can verify this, is that our being in healthful relationships is probably the best thing that we can do, not only for our mental health, but get this, for our physical health. And she cites some studies that looked at that I hate to suggest this, so don't take this wrongly, but that you're actually far greater at risk to be in a dysfunctional relationship or no relationship than you would be to smoke a couple of packs of cigarettes a day for a very long time. And I'm not suggesting that you smoke a pack of cigarettes, but what I am suggesting is that we seek relationships in which we feel loved, safely, understood, seen, acknowledged, remembered. We can go down the list. It's the only game in town. And when it comes to talking about recovery, and that's really what we're talking about, recovery requires healthful relationships. Hello, Spencer. I'm glad to see you there. That recovery requires the healing of relationships. Sometimes it requires new relationships. It's no accident that self-help support groups like the 12-step support groups and others are so integral to recovery. It takes other people. It takes a village to heal from addiction. It takes a village to heal from enslavement of any kind. And I hope that you'll find this current series on relationships inspiring and useful to you as you work to strengthen your current relationships and or seek new relationships in which you can apply skillful means to loving kindness. That's it for tonight. I want to thank you for joining me. Wish you all well, sending best wishes to all. Please stay safe, be well. Come back and join me tomorrow in our next post at Your Vitality Project. Take good care. Good night.